Air India Express Calicut landing accident that killed 21 people in August last year occurred due to the commander's non-adherence to standard operating procedures, said the final investigation report into the accident released by Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau. On August 7, 2020, an Air India Express Boeing 737-800 aircraft operating Calicut Dubai flight with 184 passengers including 10 infants and 6 crew members on board crashed on landing at 7:41 pm. The aircraft landed in tailwind condition, touched down deep into the runway and overshot the runway and safety area, damaged a navigation aid antenna before plunging about 110 feet down the tabletop runway where it hit the airport perimeter wall. The fuselage broke into three, the engines sheared off the mains. The Air India Express Boeing 737-800 aircraft was operating a quick return flight on sector Calicut Dubai Calicut under Vande Bharat Mission. The aircraft and crew had an uneventful flight from Calicut to Dubai. With the same crew, the aircraft departed from Dubai for Calicut at 3:30 pm Indian Standard Time as flight AXP 1344. The weather at Calicut was poor with heavy rain and strong winds, which had the pilots carry out a missed approach on the first attempt while coming into land on runway 28. Even as the pilots were preparing for a second attempt to land on runway 28, the pilots of an Air India aircraft departing for Delhi asked for a takeoff on runway 10. The air traffic controller changed runway in use from runway 28 to runway 10 and flight operations moved in the opposite direction. There was a headwind on runway 28, now turned into a tailwind on runway 10. When the air traffic controller suggested runway 10 for landing, the commander accepted with a careful deliberation. The controller also didn't caution the pilots about strong tailwinds. Runway 10 had a tailwind of 29 km per hour and not 18 km per hour as reported to the pilots. Aircraft land and take off in headwind. In a tailwind landing, aircraft consume a longer length of runway to touch down and come to a halt. Flight 1344 was now making an approach to land on runway 10 in tailwind condition. About 5 seconds after the autopilot was disengaged in preparation for the landing, the aircraft deviated off a particular navigation signal that helps a plane track a safe angle of descent to land. With this, the aircraft was now on an unstabilized approach to land. An unstabilized approach is simply an unsafe descent to land. The factors that contribute to an unstabilized approach include aircraft failure to adhere to the speed limits or descent rate or flight path for approach to land, etc. The first officer called out the unstabilized approach and the commander initiated a correction but overcorrected in the process. The pilot should have carried out a missed approach, that is, abort the landing, climb and return for a fresh attempt at landing. The first officer should have taken over the controls and carried out a go-around. A go-around is a procedure performed when the pilot isn't entirely sure of a safe landing. The descent is aborted, the aircraft is put in climb to return for a fresh attempt at approach and landing. With no such action from the first officer and the commander continuing with the unstabilized approach, the aircraft crossed the runway threshold at 92 feet instead of the correct threshold crossing height of 50 feet. It touched down approximately at 4,438 feet on 8,858 feet long runway in light rain with a tailwind component of 15 knots and a ground speed of 165 knots. The aircraft couldn't be stopped on the runway and this ended in a runway overrun. The aircraft exited runway 10 and at a ground speed of 84 knots and then overshot the runway and safety area, breaking a navigation aid antenna and a fence before plummeting down the tabletop runway. There was a fuel leak from both the wing tanks, however, there was no post-crash fire. Before operating the said flight, Air India Express had informed the commander that he had to operate the next day's flight out of Calicut to Doha. The actions and decisions of the commander were steered by a misplaced motivation to land back at Calicut to operate next day morning flight. The unavailability of the sufficient number of captains at Calicut was the result of faulty Air India Express HR policy. The commander had vast experience of landing at Calicut under similar weather conditions. This experience might have led to overconfidence. During the first approach to land in Calicut, the cockpit windshield wiper on the commander's side had stopped working after operating for approximately 27 seconds. The CVR recorded the commander saying, "Viper is gone. What a day for the Viper to go." The final seconds after the aircraft touched down deep into the runway point to confusion in the pilot. Also, the commander was taking multiple unprescribed anti-diabetic drugs that could have probably caused subtle cognitive deficit. Also, the central runway lights were not functioning at that rainy night. Captain M. Ranganathan, an air safety expert, the AAIB has identified it as pilot error. His decision making was poor. When the Vipers were malfunctioning, he should have diverted to the alternate airport. His compulsion to land in Calicut to operate the next day's flight points to a very serious deficiency in Air India Express safety culture.